Hi, everyone, and welcome to our early voting kickoff, specifically for the State Board of Education District 5. My name is Kelsey Kling, and I am a Government Relations and Policy Analyst with the American Federation of Teachers Texas. I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. This is a hybrid event, everyone. I'm hosting our virtual section of this event, and in a minute I will introduce you to our President Zeph Capo and our endorsed candidate for the SBOE 5 runoff, Allison Bush. This platform is going to come sometimes with a little bit of back and forth, so I hope you'll bear with us as we go through this event. But in the meantime, if you're with us online today, I'd like you to take a moment to connect to the comments in the chat and answer the question that you see on the screen. What is it that you think the State Board of Education actually does? And if you just have a big question mark for that answer, go ahead and throw in the chat where you're from, which school district you happen to teach in, if you're a teacher or a member, or what community that you are serving in. We'll give it a few minutes to let those things kind of roll in. And you will need to connect your YouTube account to the comments. That's how this platform works. And so please join us in the chat. Thanks so much. Yeah. Somebody's playing some Jeopardy music for us. I love that. Okay, you can keep those responses rolling in, but I'm going to keep us moving so that we are doing this in a timely fashion. If you could advance to the next slide for me, please. So one of the sections that we put into our newsletter whenever it's relevant is our Eyes on the Board section. We'll post a preview and a recap of board action every single time the State Board of Education meets. And I'm going to put a link in the hotline if you to join us there. If you are not already subscribed to our hotline, I can't recommend it enough. It is a great resource to share, for us to share, like I said, everything that's going on regarding State Board of Education, other statewide policy groups, and it will also provide you with some actions that you can take. Next slide, please. So, oh gosh, and this is really tiny print, but we're going to go over a couple of things. State Board of Education has several primary duties, and we're going to talk about two of them today. So the State Board of Education is a 15-member elected body. 15 members for the entire state of Texas. That's not a lot. Each of these districts covers about twice the geography of a Texas Senate district and will represent somewhere between 2 and 2.5 million people. It's a big job and a big district. It's one of the reasons why we're meeting virtually, because it's really hard for candidates for these seats to cover all of the geography for these districts. But the State Board of Education is composed of those 15 members, and one of their primary duties is to set the curriculum standards for the state. And when we say the curriculum standards, we mean the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or the TEKS, as you'll most likely hear them referred to. Those cover every single grade level and every single content area. When your third grader goes to PE class, there are TEKS for PE that teacher has to cover. And that is true for every subject area. Right after they are establishing the TEKS, they will adopt instructional materials to go along with those TEKS. So they're not only providing all of the standards for students to learn, but then they are providing those instructional materials through which those teachers are teaching those standards. They also manage through the Public School Corporation, or the Public School Fund Corporation, the corpus of the Permanent School Fund. This is the fund against which districts borrow to guarantee their bonds. It's a massive fund. I believe it's the second largest public fund in the entire country, and it is a really good uh, uh, it's a very healthy fund for us to use that to for districts to be able to guarantee their loans against. Let's see, they also ratify the rules set forth by the State Board of Educator certification. That's a whole other kettle of fish, but that's an appointed body, and so the rules that they adopt are ratified by this elected body, the SBOE. And the last and really most important thing that they do is that they review and approve charters that are recommended by the agency for approval. We're going to talk about the two highlighted yellow boxes. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So when we say it sets the curriculum standards for the state and the TEKS, this is what we're talking about. They create and review these TEKS as required or as desired. And what I mean when I say that is, like, sometimes the legislature will pass laws that say you must adopt standards that do X. In this last legislative session, one of the laws passed was SB 24. It says you must adopt anti-communism standards in the social studies TEKS for, I believe it was 4th through the 12th. And then when they say desired, standards shouldn't be static. They really should be periodically reviewed. And so even if there is not legislation that specifically guides the board to make changes in the TEKS, they will periodically review those regardless of whether or not there's been legislation passed, typically every 8 to 12 years, depending on the content area. Now, when they write these TEKS or revise these TEKS, they should be required to engage with a variety of stakeholders, parents, business owners, community members, to create consensus around what must be taught in each subject level and each grade in the state of Texas. The concern that's been happening in the state board lately is that the content advisors, the experts that have been advising, are really driving the bus alongside TEA, and the body is really ignoring a lot of the stakeholder input that has historically been a part of these standards writings. And what we think this amounts to is a state takeover of curriculum in the same way that our school districts are being taken over the state by, supposedly failing the STAR test. The other thing that's really coming up for an important review, this happens annually. The SBOE is charged with approving new charter school applications. If you see charter schools popping up like mushrooms in your neighborhood, those are usually a result of the expansion that the commissioner has authority over. But new charters have to be approved by the State Board of Education, and that's really the lever of power that stakeholders have in this process. They can't really appeal to the commissioner, but they can appeal to their elected State Board of Education member to stop these charter schools from expanding. Charter schools are part of the privatization movement, just like vouchers. Charter schools claim to be public, but they don't have the same accountability to the public as schools, independent school districts do, namely that elected board and the democratic representation in that community. Like I said, the rapid expansion of these charters via commissioner approval is creating a lot of instability in our public school systems. Not only do those expanding charter schools pull enrollment from your local school districts, but they also pull the funds from those school districts. And it's extremely inefficient to have two systems serving the same community of students. All of those financial burdens related to facilities and staffing, those all double up when a charter school opens. And last, we think that the charter claims they claim to be innovative. They're supposed to be innovative, but they really don't serve all students. They're a shadow system that actually don't support your marginalized students in the same way. Your students who receive special education services are often not served in charter schools very well. In fact, most of the time, a lot of those kids do what we call boomerang. They will go to a charter school and enroll there, hoping to get better services, and end up coming right back around to the school district. And I see a question in the chat here. What do they not do? So much happens with them. Not sure if that's a question, but maybe if the commenter could restate if that's something that you'd like me to answer, happy to do that. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So quick board update, all that's been going on there. We have several big curriculum things that are actually in public comment right now. At the April meeting, the board approved for what we call first reading is the social studies TEKS and the literary lists. These literary lists were required by a bill that was passed by the legislature a couple sessions ago, and they have been proposed by the agency and voted on now by the board for this public comment period. These literary lists are huge. They are going to be a massive undertaking for professional development, for materials acquisitions. These reading lists really are very whitewashed. There is not a good representation in diversity of authors, diversity of time period even, and there's a lot of concern that students will not be able to see themselves in the materials that are going to be the required reading. They also include a lot of biblical readings at various grade levels, and because they're so voluminous, there's really not a lot of room for teacher autonomy in choosing books and materials that will be reflective of the communities that they are serving. Also leaves no room for student choice in that reflective reading that's so important. The social studies TEKS are also up for consideration. We talked a little bit about in the last slide how these were created with a really undemocratic process and on an artificially accelerated timeline. That bill we talked about, SB 24, that required these anti-communism standards to be adopted, they're using that as a deadline to rewrite all of the social studies standards from the ground up. This isn't a simple revision. They threw the baby out with the bathwater and are rewriting every single student expectation. There's a lot of complaints, and very well founded, that these standards are too focused on Western civilization and that they sideline the contributions of communities of color throughout our state and our national history. Again, these emphasize a Christian worldview, and they downplay a lot of the difficult portions of our history that we really need to reckon with, namely the history of slavery in this country. But the good news is that public comment is open. You are allowed to go into the portal and to make comments about specific things that you think are wrong in these standards, or even specific things that you think might be very well put. We're going to have, just in the hotline this week, we will have some opportunities for you to take action on those standards between now and the end of the close of that public comment period in June. And also in June, that's when those new charter schools will be up for consideration approval. The board just conducted what they call capacity interviews, in which the charters that had gotten to kind of the semifinals of this process were interviewed by several TEA staff and allowed to present their case for approval. The agency will further consider those applications and those interviews, and they will make a final recommendation to the board by May 27th. And then the board will be allowed to vote on those at their June meeting. That is a lot of talking, and I hope you learned a little something from this presentation. But what I hope you really learned is just how important the State Board of Education is. They have a lot of duties and responsibilities. A lot falls on their shoulders, and so it's critically important that we get the right people in those positions. And that is why the Texas AFT is supporting Allison Bush in this primary runoff. She has won our support through her stances on curriculum, on the support of teachers. She was a teacher herself and has served in several different capacities. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We'll just wrap this up. Oh, and I think that's it, actually. So I want to thank you all for joining us online. Again, please subscribe to our newsletter. That's going to give you a lot of information about how you can move forward. And it gives me great pleasure now to turn over this conversation to our state president, Zeph Capo, and our endorsed candidate, Allison Bush.
Yep.
Here I am.
Okay. We ready to go? Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kelsey, and it's great to see everybody or be with everybody today. We are actually joining from Bastrop, Texas, which is part of State Board of Education District 5. I want to start off by saying thank you to my friend Karen Durr with Karen Durr Realty Group for hosting us. We're here with the Bastrop Federation of Teachers, and we thought it would be fitting for Allison to tell us about herself, because Allison, at one point in time, you were a member of the Bastrop Federation of Teachers.
I was, yes.
And so why don't you let our viewers know a little bit about you and your educational background?
Yes. So I've been in education for 25 years. In fact, I started in the classroom in a town outside of Houston, Crosby, Texas, where I taught theater and speech, and soon made my way to Central Texas. And I lived here in Bastrop for about 7 or 8 years. And I worked at Bastrop ISD and Bastrop High School, and I was a member of AFT, which was such a great opportunity for me to learn and be a union member. So I love being here. But I am running for State Board of Education in District 5, which encompasses, and I think y'all just learned all about the State Board, but District 5 encompasses 6.5 counties, which is Caldwell, Guadalupe, Bastrop, Hayes, and Travis County, and then a little bit of Williamson County and Blanco County. So it's all of those. And so I'm excited to be here and excited to talk to all of y'all.
Excellent. And definitely after, I know that Allison's got multiple events as a candidate going on. I remember how that is as well too. And we're going to talk more about that ballot and how you can find your information to vote. But I wanted to get in through a couple more questions, because I know that Kelsey was just talking about the important work of the State Board of Education. And I know that many of our members have really had to deal with the outcomes of the current board. The changes in curriculum, the focus away from what seems like academics into this kind of culture war spaces. Like, why should people vote for you? Why should they put you at the table to help make these decisions, Allison?
You know, I get asked that question a lot. And first of all, somebody had asked me, so what does your experience bring to this board? And I said, well, one of the things that I can say is that I can look at the other board members and say, as an educator and having 25 years experience, I know firsthand that the decisions that you're making at the state board level, how they actually affect a child in the classroom, how they affect the teachers, and what that effect has on the community as a whole, because I've lived it. And so I think that's the first thing that I can bring to this position, and my experience can bring to this position. I'm the candidate that is not only student-centered. I'm going to focus on the students, but I'm also focusing on teachers. We need to make sure that we are treating our teachers as the professionals they are, not political pawns. We need to make sure our teachers are first and foremost given the resources, the respect, and the relief that they need to do their job. Because we get asked all the time, you know, we want to recruit more teachers, and we want to make sure we're giving retention to our teachers and staff too. You know, I was staff for a long time. We want to make sure we're doing that. We can't do that if we're not respecting them. So I think that's another thing that I can bring, because I have been there. In K through 12, I know exactly. I'm not just an educator. I'm a public school educator. And so I know I can bring those kinds of experience to this board.
And I think that's really important because, this is a Democratic primary election that we are talking about. And some of the things that we've seen come out of this last board, came from Democratic candidates that were funded by Democratic supporters who actually were funding privatization.
Yes.
Deep level charter schools and other pieces. We've seen what's happened with families in the voucher issue as well too. So can you talk about that a bit? Where do you stand as a former educator on the privatization issues and how we treat our public schools versus these other entities?
Well, first of all, we need transparency across the board. I mean, we all need to be playing on the same playing field, and that's not happening when you have privatization. I am against the unlimited expansion of charter schools, especially when they are diverting funds away from our away from our public neighborhood schools. It's very important to me that when our neighborhood schools are offering the same things, we have certified teachers, that we're not taking the funds away from them. So that's my first thing when it comes to charter schools. Vouchers, I'm definitely opposed vouchers, 100% end of story. I know that the State Board of Education they don't have any real control over the voucher system, but I will fight against that and work with other state legislation to fight the voucher system. But of course, I think it's very important that we focus on public neighborhood schools and making sure that we are all playing from the same playing field, that there is transparency. I don't think it is fair that your tax dollars are being utilized in a public school and you have no real decision making there, because a charter school board is appointed, not elected. And there's different rules. The Texas Education Code has different rules for charter schools versus neighborhood schools. So I think we just need transparency and accountability in the same playing field.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think there's a difference. And even we are not against charter schools and entities that provide unique opportunities for students that we maybe, either our public schools don't, or maybe we even don't want. For example, one of the charter schools that I actually used to be supportive of provided residential programs that, I was like, it's probably better that they are closer able to be monitored and looked at, because they're a smaller, unique system to be able to do this. And I think that that's an appropriate place that we're talking about versus like some of the things that we've seen, and this is where I think educators and parents and others get really upset, the lack of accountability and responsibility for operators like IDEA that spend our tax monies on private jets, that buy lavish hotel buildings, that do these kind of things. And I think that's what many of our members tell us. We want somebody that will at least bring those up, hold them accountable, and make sure that that somebody is actually speaking out about those types of differences and comparisons.
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear that I do understand that somebody has to bring those questions forward. And I have no problem with that. With the State Board of Education, when it comes to charter schools, it is a veto power that we have. So when new applicants come up, for example, there's 5 new charter school applications on board coming up in June. So if I was sitting on that board right now, I would first be looking at them based on how are they affecting our neighborhood schools? What resources would they be taking from XYZ school if they pop up? The other thing that I would really be looking at is, once they are approved, they could pop up in your neighborhood, even if they aren't saying that they're coming up now, because once they are approved, they can have a school anywhere they want to. So that to me is those are very important questions to ask. And that's the control that the state board has. Is I would definitely use my veto power and ask those tough questions on how are you affecting our neighborhood schools.
Thank you. And my last question before we open it up to audience members from our members here in Bastrop. There's been a lot of talk lately about AI, its use in classrooms and or with students, and particularly screen time. I hear from parents and family members, regardless of their political background, left, right, and everywhere in between, they're frustrated when it seems like too much time is put into screen time for students and not enough into authentic relationships between the adults and the kids in the room. Where is the appropriate level? What should we be doing about that? What are your thoughts about those pieces? In particular, considering the fact that the Bluebonnet curriculum seems like it must have been written by a hot mess of AI. Because we had, what, thousands of errors that were turned in?
1,400.
Yeah.
1,400 errors in that curriculum.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so first of all, AI is here. Okay, so we have to embrace, and students are using it.
Yep.
So, and I love it when I hear that my teacher says she has a tool to know if I'm writing AI. Yeah, she probably does, but she's also probably saying that as well.
Exactly.
But okay, so this is where I stand with AI. We do have to write some kind of regulation on utilizing AI. But I want to go back to what you asked about screen time and how are you utilizing it and teachers' interactions and things in that sort. So I was an executive director of education foundations. Our whole purpose of most education foundations is to introduce or pay for innovative teaching programs. And so I don't know how many times we would get an application for those grant applications, and it would be like for iPads or for new technology. And we were very careful. I did it here in Bastrop, and I was also in Pflugerville, and I sat on 4 different boards across Texas. And so many times as we were reading through those applications, it was very important to every one of those boards that the interaction or the process of that was not just, okay, here's an iPad or here's this technology and it's going to babysit our kids. It was very important that there was an evaluation process that shows how that interaction was still a teachable moment with teacher interaction and child and technology. Those to me still have to happen in a classroom. And so I'm going to be very adamant about that as we introduce AI into the world, because it's going to happen. We just have to figure out how are we going to do this as educators? What is the best process to introduce this? What are the best regulations to introduce this? I know there are a lot of districts across the state of Texas that are trying to work this out. And we got to figure that out. We can't just go, okay, here's a robot we're going to put in front of our kids and we're going to teach our kids. It can't happen. I mean, what happens when a child walks up to the robot and says, so-and-so is talking about my mom, or so-and-so is doing this? It's not going to happen. There's so much more interaction that happens with a child, and we need to continue to make sure that that emotional education is still happening in our classrooms, and it can't just be AI. And as for the Bluebonnet curriculum, there were way too many mistakes, and that's what's going to happen. Yeah. We're going to end up teaching kids that mistakes are okay, and that's not okay.
It's not, and trust me, as a middle school teacher, my students were whip smart, And they were a rather worldly bunch. They would have that robot pulled apart and for spare parts and probably a day flat.
You're absolutely right. And you, as a teacher, I remember myself as a teacher. The kids would Google something. Well, Google says, you want to make sure you're whip smart too, but they'll take over if you don't watch it. So we want to make sure we're prepared as educators when we go into this world of new technology. So you're right.
Absolutely. Allison, thank you for sharing some of your thoughts about these many issues that are impacting our classrooms today. Want to just take a minute for our members from Bastrop that are here today to open it up if there are questions that any of you have. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you kind of touched on it when you talked a little bit about Bluebonnet, the curriculum, but what is your position on the high quality instructional materials, where the trend now is that we are purchasing these high quality instructional materials that are supposedly taking the place of high quality instructors. And so where we are purchasing these curriculums that are scripted, are, these canned curriculums that really limit our children's creative thinking, creative problem solving. And so, I know our district is, we use our Amplify and Eureka here in our district. And I know that is becoming more and more and more of the focus is getting these curriculums that they say are high quality instructional materials, but we see, with 1,400 errors, how high quality can they be? But then we're also allowing our districts to hire under-trained teachers because they can read from the script. So what is your position on
Well, I'm so glad you brought this up. I think that is I want to answer it with multiple points. First of all, high quality, I'm hearing that a lot, and rigorous curriculum, and we're going to produce this and this. My question first is, I do think that the review of the curriculum that's happening at the state level, the process is somewhat broken. I think that we need to work on that. And I say this because I do have a friend that went through the process and was one of the reviewers. And she came up to me afterwards and was like, I'm so glad you're running because this was my experience. I walked in the room, I'm sitting there, and it wasn't the Bluebonnet, just to let y'all know, but it was a math that she was reviewing. And they came into the room, they as being the TEA people came into the room and they said, we're giving you this. We really like this. So however they do, we need you to just score them as high as you can. And I thought, wow, that's a problem. So that's first, when I say that the process is broken, the process is broken. And the second thing is that, yes, we need educators reviewing. They say we're getting educators reviewing it, right? They say we need experts reviewing the process. That's so to make sure it is rigorous and the curriculum is critically thinking, skilled curriculum. That's another thing. But the people that we get in there, I think also needs to be our teachers that are actually teaching the curriculum now, because we want to make sure whatever this rigorous curriculum and this critical thinking curriculum that we're bringing that is high quality, that our districts are adopting, is actually adaptable to their classrooms. Yeah. Because to me, that's more important than anything, because what you teach in Bastrop and how you teach it and how you push it out in Bastrop may not work in Austin or McDade, because your students may be different. So we have to think that way as well. The other thing that I think is broken in this process is that they put incentives behind this curriculum. So with us losing funding in education, when you put an incentive, if you buy this curriculum, if you teach this curriculum, then we're going to give an incentive behind every student. Districts are going, we have to buy this and we have to teach this because we need that funding.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's another, when I say the process is broken, you put an incentive behind a curriculum, districts are like, well, what are we to do? We have to do this. We need the money. So that's why I answer it in different ways. And I have very strong opinions, and I'm single mom. I got a fire in my belly. I'll definitely fight it.
So that's a really good question to bring up.
Yes.
And thank you for asking
Yes.
that question, because this is the type of opportunity cost that can be made like this by our Commissioner of Education. Our commissioner, for example, one of the things that's happening in these schools right now is the homestead exemption. There are schools closing doors, not able to fund because the state is not fully funding the 65 and above homestead exemption. But the Commissioner of Education has the ability, with a stroke of a pen, to fund 50% of that homestead exemption for schools so that they're not closing doors and locking them down. But that's not happening because the money is being used to, quote unquote, incentivize school districts to purchase or utilize a curriculum that is the commissioner's chosen curriculum. It's almost like it's a backdoor. And when you say the process is broken, it's like a backdoor turnaround against a transparent process. If you did this kind of thing in school districts, this would be the kind of thing he was trying to take over school districts for manipulating contracts. Like, let me be real about this, and this is me saying this. I'm not putting this on anyone else, but it seems really unfair and frankly kind of shady that our tax dollars are able to be used that way. Because when I talk to parents and community members and taxpayers, they'd rather see their schools stay open and seniors get a break on their taxes than any school district or superintendent to feel like they are forced to buy a curriculum that maybe doesn't work for their students, has 1,400 errors because the cards have been stacked against them by one person that's appointed by the governor.
Absolutely. And I the reason this was all brought up to me and how I started researching this, Allison, I have superintendents telling me, Allison, I think we're going to have to do Bluebonnet. I think we're going to have to buy it. And because we need the money. And I don't want to get rid of my teachers, and I don't want to have to do this, and I don't want to have to close this door, and like other districts are doing. And some still have to do those things. Some still have to get rid of teachers. Some still have to close the door, even if they do have Bluebonnet, because it's just, we all know we're in a crisis. It's a critical crisis right now.
So absent that, people are going to have to vote for who makes these decisions, because when that legislature returns in January, whoever's in the governor's seat, whoever's in that legislature has a choice. They can allow the commissioner to have this level of control to choose to fund curriculums that he wants that may not work for school districts, or to actually provide the money for the homestead exemption that the legislature is saying needs to be in place. Or they can decide to say, no, take the money that is our Texans' tax dollars and do what we're supposed to be doing with it. Those are decisions that we as voters have this November to set the stage for who makes decisions in January.
Yes, it's very important for you to look at those individuals and find out how they feel and how they would vote for you as an educator. It's because it is hurting education right now, and they're making those decisions for you.
So any other questions from the audience before we go through here?
Just out of curiosity, to play devil's advocate about AI, is there any part of it that actually makes your job better?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, yes, that's why I say AI is here. We are going to have to embrace it. And I mean, I don't think there's anybody that hasn't. You may not know you haven't used it, but we've all used it in some way, some form or fashion. But the thing is that using it responsibly. And it's out there. We just have to figure out the right way to utilize it. And kids are using it. It doesn't matter what we want to do as teachers or what we want to do as adults. The students are using it. I mean, my child is as a young adult, and they know how to do it. In fact, I don't know how many times he's taken my phone and gone, "Alice, Mom," and done stuff for me. So we have to remember that as well.
I think it's choices. How many of y'all in the room have had to do, as educators, redundant paperwork? And so much of your time is completing paperwork, whether it's grading, whether it's reports that districts want or need, etc. So these are opportunity costs and opportunity choices. AI is a fantastic tool for figuring out how to increase efficiency for completing that necessary paperwork. I'm not going to say that they don't need to get done, but if we focused our time and attention on like how do we give time, instructional time back to the teacher to further build and cement that relationship with the student rather than doing paperwork, I think we would love AI.
Yeah.
And how do we embrace that? But instead, we have companies that make a lot of money off of our kids under the mistaken belief that they can directly teach students off of AI. And again, anybody who's been in a relationship with students in education knows that's going to be impossible in many ways. Guess what? Maybe there's a place, if you're talking about this as a tool for a parent that's homeschooling, and that's great, that's fine. But where does that start? Ultimately, that relationship between the parent as the teacher and the student has got to be there for any tool, AI or others, to be able to work. And a lot of times you all, our educators in the room, are that main relationship for 20 some odd students each and every day.
Absolutely, and I agree. And it should not take over what y'all are doing as educators by any means. You bring a different component to the job that will never be replaced. Will never be replaced. Yeah. But they, if you put robots in there, they're trying to, and we don't want that.
Yeah. So Allison, thank you very much for answering some questions with us today. I know that you've got another event or two to get to today. Yeah. So we're going to let you transition to the online spot. If there are additional questions, you can answer from the road, or we'll say we appreciate it. And in the meantime, we're going to transition to talk about your vote and your position as we close up, because there's several of us in the room today that are about to leave here and hopefully go early vote just a couple hundred yards away at the courthouse. And some that have already voted. Yeah. Excellent.
Love it. I want to thank y'all for letting me be here. I will be online listening as I'm driving to the next place. So if there's anybody online that has a question, please ask it, but I'm going to.
Awesome. Allison, thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right. Thank you, everyone. So they're closing up there. So I think one of the things to help each and every one of you that are out there, get ready. We are in the first day of early voting. How do you get ready to vote in every election? And in the chat, they should be dropping a link to the AFT Votes page for you. It's really simple. I actually did it earlier. You can enter your address and it will pull up your ballot. It will show you who you've got to vote for. It will provide you links. We don't want to tell you necessarily who to vote for. We want to encourage you to do your research, as we talked about earlier today. Regardless of party, regardless of background, it is important now more than ever that we pay attention to the individual and to the issues that they're bringing to the table. So please drop your address into the spot, look up your information, make sure that you know where to vote, make sure that you've got that information in there. And Sierra, did we have a sample ballot to show everybody? Okay. here's what you would see. It tells you how much time you've got. It tells you who's on your ballot, who you can actually vote for in particular races, depending on your party primary. And that's one thing to remember. If you voted in the primary in March, you must vote in the runoff for the primary that you voted in March. You will not be allowed to switch party primary votes. If you did not vote at all in the primary in March, you are then free and open to go into either primary's runoff election. Now, obviously, if you want to support Allison Bush for State Board of Education, you need to go into the Democratic primary runoff. If you want to do that, that's where you would need to be. But those are the differences, and if you've got information, we're here to assist and help. Please feel free to reach out to us at texasaft.org or on our phone number, and you've got my email, zcapo@texasaft.org, and any of our staff. So I want to thank you all for spending time with us today. Please go out and vote. You've got the rest of this week to vote early. And then March 26th is the absolute last day that you have to cast your vote in this primary runoff election. Thank you for spending time with us today, and we're signing off here from Bastrop, Texas. Talk to you soon. Whose union?
Our union!
Whose union?
Our union!
Whose union?
Our union! AFT!
I'm definitely grateful for AFT for being able to communicate to different educational organizations to be able to unite us.
We support our students, and the Educator Bill of Rights will help support us and any professional that chooses to work in education.
A lot of teachers are leaving the profession because we are not paying them enough.
As a teacher now, I do a lot of funding out of my own pocket. If the vouchers go through, I'm having a lot of more money coming out of my pocket.
When teachers are overworked and underpaid, when classrooms are overcrowded, and when schools are undervalued, it's harder for us to dream big about our futures.
Vouchers will significantly hurt our districts.
As it is, we haven't been funded, and to think that they want to take more of that funding away is just, we can't even fathom.
Vouchers are definitely a tax cut to the wealthy. And what does this say about us if we are divesting from our public schools?
We've beaten vouchers since the first one was proposed in 1957. We've done it before, and we can do it again.
This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a Texas issue. This is a people issue. This is a us issue.
We can't buy ourselves a legislature like the governor did.
It's their duty to create a public education system in this state suitable that it can educate any child. Now, I ask you, if they would do that, why would you need a voucher?
For 30 years, they've been responsible for public education in Texas. Get them out of this office because they don't have our best interest at heart.
This is those big money mega donors versus the rest of us.
On private school vouchers, Texas educators say, hell no.
Hell no! Hell no!